some potentially very stormy weather on the way. It's 5:45 in the evening now, I guess, and finally got my arse out the front door. I've had one of those days where everything feels out of sorts. You know, some days you get those days where you think it's Thursday the whole day, but it's in fact Wednesday. You wake up the next day, it's as if nothing was ever out of place. And yeah, today, since the moment I opened my eyes this morning, has just felt completely out of line and out of sorts. I haven't been able to put my finger on why. In fact, me and an old friend of mine used to talk at work about days like this and saying, do you reckon that we're somebody's science project? You know, he was a bit old school. I think the sort of more recent analogy would be something like the Matrix, you know. Do you ever get the feeling on those days where you're constantly stubbing your toe? This goes wrong, that goes wrong. You spill the third cup of tea over the floor, you know. Do you ever get the feeling that it's a situation where we're somebody's science and sociology homework and they're just taking the piss and sort of guiding us in directions where they're sort of sitting like they're playing something like The Sims, going, watch this, I'm going to make him stub his toe, bang, ow, you know, and they just wet themselves laughing. Like my daughter playing something like The Sims. You know, she'll sort of guide them into hysterical misdemeanors and accidents and stuff like that. And it does make you think. People really overuse the terms troll and hater. You know the implication, it's somebody who is dismissed on sight. You know, obviously some people are these things and they prove themselves to be so. But some people just go into a situation ready to argue their point and they're immediately dismissed. Your point, you obviously do this on every video, you're just a hater. You know, the implication is you've got no point whatsoever because you get some kind of recreational pleasure out of disagreeing with people. And far be it from me to accuse this person of that, but I've got somebody who regularly comments on my stuff and we've had our ups and downs. My only criticism would be that the criticisms would be, there's a couple really, is that there's never any balance. It's always just very cryptic and very sarcastic. Really, that's about it. You know, it's life and certain traits like sarcasm only work. You know, it's like humour only works because there is so much tragedy. You've got to play one thing off against the other for it to be the for it to sort of have the power that is implicated in using it. It's like when people, you know, I can remember when I was younger, I try and sort of not do it so much these days, but constantly swearing right up to category C swear words. You know, swearing is to add gravitas and passion to a point. And when it's every other word, you know I came across people in my last job. I used to just think, well, back off, you just sound so ugly, constantly effing and jeffing. And anyway, made my point about that, but so a point was made today, and don't even think about that nonsense of, oh, don't let it get to you. I only ever draw attention to people in my comments when they're negative, if indeed I think it's an energy that we'll all recognise, okay? I don't let it bother me. And anyway, I'm not going to pretend it doesn't bother me when it does, you know? You're you, I'm me, you deal with things your way, I deal with things my way. Let's just get over that, shall we? I can't become you, you can't become me. But I did a video yesterday about my state of mind, my mental health, and without any explanation as to what it meant, just a link to a very tragic story of a homeless guy in America. This person who has a habit of sort of being borderline troll, they're not, said, you've given more away in this video with the Darth Vader poster and the Joker poster than any other information you've given about yourself verbally in a video. You know, that's the implication. It's not necessarily, and I'm paraphrasing what was said. And you know what the implication there is. You're immature, you haven't grown up. If people don't make themselves clear, you have to start drawing conclusions. There's no point engaging this person in conversation because they won't talk. They speak in cryptic sound bites, sarcastic cryptic sound bites. And it's tedious, to say the least. I'm very open and honest with this person and tell them so. You know, I regularly say, you're just boring. And ironically, I've got a bit of time for this person. I really have. I kind of understand where they're coming from. I know a little bit about their life, and I kind of sympathise. Even through what, at some points, has become sort of outright, quite abusive sort of accusatory bullshit. But anyway, Joker poster on my wall. Darth Vader. So what? They'd be there probably, whatever. I think if I had my own place, if it wasn't a place I was renting, you know, if it was a place that eventually, like when I get a council flat for me and my daughter, I'd have them framed, things like that, rather than just stuck on a wall. You know, I live in a bedsit. It's essentially mine and my daughter's. That's why I live here. You know, I'm hundreds of miles from anybody I truly know here, and that's why I'm here. Last May, when I'd been here a month, I spoke to my daughter and said, what should we do with this room? It's a bit bare. I know, Daddy, let's go and buy posters. So we came to consensus about the posters we wanted to go and buy, and over the next couple of weeks, you know, we put the initial 3 up that we bought for £5, and then it was like, we need more, you know, and we went up to the shop and it was a bit of an exciting project. And that's the depth of those posters. I live in a bedsit with yellowing, the walls look like the yellowing fingers and eyes of an alcoholic smoker. Put the posters up, yeah, it looks nice, it looks bright, it looks happy. Reading anything into people's behaviour is absurd, especially in my case. You know, I think that I'm pretty sort of open to criticism and lines of questioning. Why not ask me? I'm a pretty sort of complexity-free person when it comes to sort of opening up about my motives of doing something. But you know, when you live in a world that is that not critical, but that willing to try and read some kind of immaturity, some kind of dimension that is lacking in your spirit and soul because you know, you've got posters on your wall. It's quite exhausting, and I think we've all been there. You know, you can come out with all the usual stuff and say, well, don't let it get to you. You know, I'm not suggesting it has got to me to any great extent. I'm just saying, you have these things happen in your life where somebody reads 1,000 mile an hour V8 engine into your vehicle, and the truth of the matter is it's a push bike with a puncture, you know, and it just gets boring. And I think that if we interact too much with people, even when you're completely open and honest about what and who you are, people will still read a motive, an implication into everything that you're doing, even when it's not there. I think I'm just at, you know, a point in my life where I'm beginning to realise that the divisions that are there with regards to mental health and trying to talk to people who do insist on giving you their version of how they would deal with it, how damaging it actually is. I know that there are aspects of life that are just so simple when you put them on paper, you know. Just don't let things get to you, move on, rise above. Yeah, like with regards to sort of how much progress I made last year. I know in the last couple of months, put a stop to it now. I've put on a bit of weight again because you know, there is so little pleasure in life that we do need those base pleasures indulged, and when there's very little going on in life, you tend to do things that give you those base pleasures, you know. Sometimes very destructive, sometimes it goes into sort of like sex addiction, drug and drinks, drink and drugs. In my case it's just eating, you know, it's not too bad. But yeah, you know, people say, it's not doing you any good, stop. It's like, well, okay, well I'll just give up pleasure, present version, completely, shall I? You know, I've identified the fact that there's an issue there, there's a problem or a series of problems that I need to deal with. But you've still got to indulge those aspects of yourself that are in need of being touched. You know, sure, they're sort of polyfilling a gap that needs cementing, but you know, you can't pretend you're ahead of the game. You can't pretend you're sort of doing better than you are. Bit of a variation on the theme of mental health here, but this time, well, the beginning of last year, 18 months ago, I needed to sort myself out. I needed a job and I needed a house in this area. I was 150 miles away, but I had the money, but I didn't have the ID required to get ID. Trust me, all those people that we may have commented on, why don't they just go home? Why don't the homeless just get a job? Why don't they get benefits and sort themselves out? You need ID to get even basic ID. Okay, you know, I'm not going to go into explaining that one now. But even after I'd lived here for 2 months, I got basic government ID, used it in a situation where I needed to, and you know what I was told? It's the wrong kind of ID. It was a European Union citizen's card that I got, but it's the wrong kind of ID, you know, recognised by the government for immigrants and the like, but not for me. I still haven't got any ID sorted out. It was only down to a very kindly agreement with the agency who I rent the house from that they allowed me to move here. I had the money, I could pay up front for a year, so I did. It is an absolutely absurd situation, and why I'm going on about this will become clearer in a second. Like a lot of people, mine was slightly more pleasurable in their reasoning. People fall off the radar as far as being known by the system goes. You know, there's a lot of forums that I was part of at the beginning of last year where I just wanted to know other people's experiences of it, you know. And most of them were women who'd married somebody at 20 years old, extremely rich, and divorced them, and then discovered they didn't have anything that you need. They didn't have ID, they didn't have references, and they couldn't get jobs and they couldn't get houses, you know. And there's a subculture of people out there who are totally reliant on the goodness of others to get a foothold in the world, you know, and it shouldn't be that way. It really shouldn't. I go to work for or rather I apply through mine to go and do this voluntary work to help me with my mental state, and it turns out I need 2 official references. Old employers, vicars, doctors, you know, the like. Not everybody's got them. Even just becoming a charity worker to aid your mental health, you've got to be part of the system. There's nothing out there for people who aren't. And you know, with who I've got to get in touch with how life has been for me, to get references, I don't want to do it. You know, I will, because I do want to be doing something at this point in time, but there is so much out there to keep you down. I'm honestly gobsmacked by the fact that you need 2 official references to do charity work, voluntary work, you know, for the benefit of your and other people's mental health. The whole world just seems to be utterly steeped in meaningless and obstructive bureaucracy. You know, as I say, it was this time last year I sort of managed to get over a lot of hurdles with regards to it all. But even people trying to get better from being at the bottom of the pile, having real problems with their psychological makeup, yet you've got to prove you're worthy, you've got to prove you're part of the system. And the amount of people who say get to a halfway house, who've been on the streets, alcoholics, drug addicts, it gets to the point where they think, okay, right, I'm going to go and do some work for Mind, I'm going to go and work for so-and-so, you know, charity that they promote. Well, no, I can't, because I've got no one to give me references, because I'm not on the system, and I haven't been since I have been on the streets for the last 5 years, as a for instance. Anyway, look, I'm waffling on and on about this. I think I've made my point. It's just a bureaucratic nightmare, this world, for people who just find themselves falling on situations sometimes through convenience, where they drop off the radar of the system, sometimes because life becomes so hard they end up on the streets. Drug addicts, alcoholics, I've really waffled on today. I'm not exactly in good sorts, as it were, today, but you know, I'm not in a bad frame of mind, but I'm not sort of being as concise as I like to be. Anyway, I hope that's made sense.